You're an adult now, and you've moved several places, you've met lots and lots of people, but how do adults actually make friends? If you've been wondering this, thank you for joining Embracing the Fight, because that's what I'm going to talk about today. How do adults make friends? But before we get into that, I'm Erica Lamar, your digital creator and host for Embracing the Fight. And I have been, that since January of 2023, where I started off talking about physical and mental health issues and concerns that, people don't normally talk about. I started the conversation off discussing my journey through thyroid cancer. But now that I am claiming has come to an end, there's so much more, that's going on in the world with other people. Because if you've been watching the Race and Fight, you'll know that I've had several guests on, and there have been several conversations about a myriad of things. So, with that being said, if you'd like to be a guest, I would love to have you on Embracing the Fight. All you need to do is either reach out to me on social media, and I'm on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, X, and Blue Sky as Embracing the Fight. The only difference is on Instagram, I'm Embracing the Fight _. And if you're not on social media and you still want to be on the show, just send me an email to operations@diversitydesigned.com. Also, if you're just an audio listener, and I love you guys too because you guys listen like crazy, you can find me anywhere that Lives and Syndicated, puts out the show. There's like 35 different podcast platforms that my show actually shows on. All right. So now that I've gotten the business of everything out of the way, I was sitting down thinking, about friendships in general. So let me take you back, to when I was a child. A lot of people, don't know this, but growing up, I didn't have neighbors at all. Not one, like not within walking distance, I should say. You would have to drive because with all the woods and all the little animals that exist in the woods, it wouldn't be a safe thing for you to do to set out on foot unless you had, some form of protection like a machete, a gun, some bear mace, something to help defend yourself. And then at the same time, I don't know how effective that stuff would be if you're terrified out of your mind and you're trying to run too. So basically, the only people that I had around me, were my parents and my siblings and the animals, like I said, that were out here. We also had cows, chickens, pigs, things of that nature, when I was growing up. So when I got to school, I found myself at a disadvantage because, there were kids from different neighborhoods that already knew each other. And I didn't know anybody. So it was like, how do I get into these friend groups without, being extra, without them looking at me saying that she's weird or she's this or she's that? Because, that was a real thing for me because only people that I had to be around my brother and sister, and they had to love me because we were blood, so they had to they had to tolerate me. But strangers don't have to do that. So at a very young age, I decided that I had to be the best of whatever it is I was trying to do to be noticed. Because, who wants a loser to be their friend? I don't know anybody that says, oh, you lose everything, I want you to be my best friend in all the whole world. Nobody wants that. They want someone that brings, joy, happiness, goodness, greatness, things, that cause them to stand out so that they can be recognized as the friend of a person who is good. Nobody wants to be recognized as someone who is constantly down or constantly has problems, issues, or troubles. So anyway, let's go back to, elementary school. I had to learn too that I couldn't be the first in line for everything because I was in Miss Ross's kindergarten at Hunt when Hunt School was open, because they closed it for a while and I ended up going to, another school, Walter P. Jones. You guys hear me talk about that on the Gathering on the Hill podcast sometimes. But anyway, at Hunt, I had this teacher. Her name was Miss Charlotte Ross, and I know she's still alive, and she's really, that lady was jazzy. She wore like heels like Beyonce all through kindergarten. It's like, man, how's this lady out here, running around with these kids in heels? Like, who does that? But she did it, and she did it well. Anyway, she saw that, I was smart because I could already read when I was in kindergarten, because when I was younger, I had gone to vacation Bible school and they tried to make me read and I couldn't read. And my mom said I was crying and she was trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And I said, I can't read. And from that point, she said she started trying to teach me how to read. I learned how to read very early. And, I was reading 100 books a summer. But anyway, my teacher noticed, that I was smart. I could color in the lines. I could do all this different stuff because, my mom, she worked with us because she didn't have a job outside the home. So she made sure that, we could do the basic things and then some additional things. So those things stood out. And then I was, athletically inclined. I was very fast, very strong, all those things. So when people wanted to play games like tug of war or, something that caused you to have to pull or push or run or something like that, I was chosen quite often because it's like, man, this little girl is strong. This makes no sense. And I took pride in that because people started to like gravitate toward me because I was smart and because I was strong. But then I found out that you just couldn't use those things always to your advantage. Let me give you an example. I remember, there was a slide that was on the playground. And I thought that every day, if I ran the fastest and got to the slide first, that I could get on the slide and go down. Well, apparently, Miss Ross didn't want me. Well, I'm not going to say she didn't want me to be first all the time. She wanted all the children to experience what it was like to be first. So she would line us up. And some days, the other kids would push me to the front because they were like, hey, you beat us all over here. This is like kids rules. Like, you beat us all over here, you get to the front of the line. Well, apparently they pushed me to the front of the line, and there was this one guy that when they pushed me to the front of the line, he would not let me get in front of him. And when he got to the top of the slide, I pushed him off. So when I pushed him off, Miss Ross comes over. She's like, "You can't do that." And then, she put me in the little timeout or whatever. And then after, school that day, she stopped my mom, told my mom what I had done. And then I got home. My mom was like, "You can't do that. In order for you to make friends, you have to be a friend." She said, "You can't go pushing people around and doing mean things just because you want to be in the front of the line. Sometimes others have to go first. It's give and take in friendships." So, as a kid, I carried that through life. Middle school, high school, every friend that I ever had, it was someone that, it was a give and take situation. It was never anyone that I felt like I could run over or take things from. It was always someone, who I could build with. And then before I went to college, I was so sad because I had some really good friends, from kindergarten all the way through high school. And I was like, man, we're not going to the same college. We're not doing, the same things. And it's like, I'm going to miss you guys. But how in the world am I going to go out into the world and meet more people and forge these types, of relationships? So I often tell my friends what I did. And I was so grateful and so thankful, that I had the mind to do this. Before I went to college, I prayed. I asked the Lord to only bring people in my life that would not bring harm, embarrassment, or pain. That He would bring people that had a heart like His, because my heart was trying to match His. So if their heart was like mine, striving to be better, striving to do better, then they would only seek to help lift me up as I would help lift them up. And then when I say, Lord have mercy, God broke the mold when He gave me the friends that He gave me in college. I will never trade those people for anything in the entire world. And my best friend, we always kind of joke like, if somebody says something out of the way, like, oh, you remember when Erica did XYZ, or you remember when Tiffany did XYZ, both of us get quiet and don't answer. We don't give them a yes, no. Otherwise, it's like that little key is in the vault. You will never know if one of us has to tell you, unless, we get dementia or something later on in life and we just go telling everything. But by then, people going to think we crazy anyway. They're not going to believe it. So, whatever. I'm just saying that when I became an adult, I had enough in my heart, in my mind, to know that I needed to talk to the Lord about the people that He brought to me. Because, like I said, I never had like a neighborhood and never really was around people to know the nuances of the way that relationships worked in groups. I only knew what it was like to have a family that, truly supported you and loved you, and they wouldn't do anything to you. I didn't have to worry about, them trying to steal anything or fight or anything. Well, we did fight when we were little, but I mean, like those crazy fights that you see these kids getting jumped, 10 kids coming to a bus stop beating a child to death, that kind of stuff. I didn't have to worry about, anything like that, because it was just us. And if anybody ever came over here, they had to drive over here because the school bus didn't even come down in here. So, I just didn't have that type of relationship with people. I had to learn, how to build relationships with people. So I had enough sense to say, Lord, send me those friends. Don't let me just go out and find people and pick people, because my little picker, honestly is off, because I should have done the same thing when I was talking to God about a husband. My little picker was way off. So I didn't ask him the same thing, and I know I should have. That's a whole other podcast. But anyway, because I asked him for the people, the type of people that would help me to grow and I could help them to grow, we're still growing now. And we are, 30 years in, really, as friends. And I thank God for that. And then even after I graduated from college, it's like, oh, I got to move, to a new place. And I don't know anybody. And, how do I meet people? So I prayed again. But this time I said, Lord, I love to play tennis. I love to dance. I love, and it's funny because I didn't learn how to dance until I got to college. That's another story too. It's actually pretty funny. But I was like, there are so many things that I like to do. I like to travel, I like to do all this stuff. And I need to meet people that like to do those things, because who wants to have a friend that whenever you say, oh, let's go do XYZ, and their answer is always no. Why are we even friends? We need to be able to do some things to help our friendship to grow. Now, I understand if a person doesn't have, the money to do certain things and they're saying no because I get that. But I'm saying, if you got the money, you got the time, why are you saying no if you the friend, right? It doesn't make sense. So over time, I've moved, 3-4 times in my lifetime. After high school, I'm saying I moved 3-4 times. And each time I moved, I would meet, a different set of people. And I knew, I could tell like right away if those people were going to be my tribe, my people, or if they were just going to be people that I thought were nice and cool, to hang out with. Because you can have associates that, act as friends, but those people that are truly deeply rooted in your love and their love, and there's nothing but peace, and your nervous system feels safe when they're around, those are truly your friends. Because sure, you got that person that you could call if it's like, hey, I want to go out for drinks, or hey, I want to go to a football game, or what, let's go for a walk. You have those people that you can do that with, but then can you tell them that you were like molested when you were 8 years old or something? Can you tell them that sort of stuff? And if the answer is no, that you can't tell them the deepest, darkest thing that, is dragging you in your life, then they're not your friend. Because there's something in you that's saying to you, don't tell this person that, because they won't protect you, they won't hold you safe. But then at the same time, you can't tell everyone everything. You need to take some of that stuff, just to God, because if they tell it, think about it, If you never told them, they never would have had the, the knowledge to share. People share, gossip all the time. But then when you go ahead and make it truth and people see that person with you, then they're like, oh, they know what, so and so is doing, or they know what so and so has going on because that's their friend. Mm-mm. That person is their associate if they can't, hold it, if they can't keep it safe. But then again, like I said, it takes time for you to decide who can keep your secret safe. Because imagine you're always telling someone the things that are going on in your life, but then when you sit there and think about it, you don't know anything about them but their name and their birthday and where they live. 9 times out of 10, they're not your friend. They're a data collector. They're getting that information to, share and spring at whatever opportune moment they see. And it's like, oh, everybody thinks that, Erica is this and Erica's that. Well, let me tell you, she did X, Y, Z, and y'all think she's this, and you do not need those kind of people in your life. Sure, I know you're sitting there saying, well, messy people have friends. Yes, they do. But guess what? Birds of a feather flock together. So if you see one messy girl or messy guy, 9 times out of 10, it's 2 or 3 more of them that's friends. Now, yeah, you do have that, one person that anomaly that hangs with those kind of people, and they're not that way. It's only because they haven't realized, you know, who those people are, or they were friends with them for many, many, many years prior to. Like, imagine some of those people that, I say that I've been friends since kindergarten. People change, as they get older. Imagine you had a friend in kindergarten and their parents were rich and they had everything they needed, everything they wanted, and everything they didn't want. And now as an adult, they can't afford to pay their bills, and they start to get salty, or they start to get angry, or not even say their parents were rich, but say they had dreams and they wanted to be something specific and something special, and they didn't make it. And they look at your life and they're like, oh my God, she has everything and she didn't have these kind of dreams, and she didn't want this and she didn't want that. And now they're hating on you secretly, burning themselves up on the inside because you're doing well and they're not. But in your mind, you think this is my friend because we've been friends for years. Guess what? You don't have to be their friends forever, because friends or people come into your life for 2 reasons. One, to be a lesson, or to be a blessing. But when you think about it, the ones who come to be a lesson, sometimes they turn out to be the greatest blessing when you get the heck away from them. When you make that change in your life to stop accepting people just because they have a long span of time that you've known them. Just because you know someone for a long time doesn't mean that person is your friend. You just know them for a long time. Think about it. If you have car insurance and you've been driving for 20 years and you have the same insurance, they're not your friend. They're taking your money and they're protecting your car. And as soon as you don't make your payment, they're going to cut it off. And then if your car is new, they're going to reach out to that, financing place and tell them, hey, you don't have insurance. And then you're going to have some problems. That's because they're not your friend. They are getting what they can from you because they're a business. And that's just how some people look at friendships. They're sitting here and they're saying, you know what? I'm getting all these things because, I want to be better and do better. And I'm trying to figure out how they are doing it. And when they do that, they don't realize that they're missing a blessing in the amazing person that you are. Just know that time should not be a metric for keeping someone or something around you. When you look at adult friendships, you have to look at, what does the person actually bring to your life and what do you bring to theirs? Because friendships are very similar to relationships. It's about give and take. It's not about always taking or always giving, because you'll find yourself either depleted or you'll be the one doing the depleting. It needs to be, balanced. And that's what, friendship should be. So, as an adult, how do you make friends? So, let's look at it, after college, talked about, growing up college and then moving several times. What about, after life's changes? You've gone through a divorce. You've lost, you know, a significant other, or you lost your job and you've had to relocate. Say in all three of those instances, you have to move differently. So when you divorce, imagine that all of your friends that you all had together, were they his friends or her friends? And once the divorce was final, are they still both of your friends, or were they only friends with you because they were friends with your spouse? And if that's the case, it's like you are going to have to start over, especially if you're in a new area. Say you're one of those people that followed your spouse because of, say, military, or because, of something else. And once you follow them, then your life became their life. And if that's the case, once you're not together anymore, then what do you have and who do you have? Sure, you have those people that you work with, but what happens when those people change jobs? I don't know, a whole lot of people that say, "Oh, I kept in touch with my work friend." No, those people moved to that new job, met new people, start hanging out with new people, and you know, new relationships formed. So, what do you do when you're in those situations where you have to start again? So, what I would suggest, whether it was divorce, or if you were widowed, or if you lost your job, changed jobs, if there was some life change that moved you out of your level of comfort and moved you away from the people that are in your circle, the people that are your friends, and you want to have people close, to you. You want new friends in your area. Now, I'm not saying you're getting rid of your friends every time you move. I'm not saying that, because, like I said, I have some 30 plus year friendships, some 40 plus. And every time I move to a new place, I'm what you call a collector of people. I try to meet people and bring people into my life. And like I said, as of late, my little picker, it was off when I got married, but it was off with some friendships because I was trying to help people and do things, and instead of me helping and doing things for them, they ended up being like users. So we don't want that for you. So when you are in a place that's brand new to you, or a circumstance has caused you to be in this place and you don't know anyone new, first, look at the things that you enjoy doing. If you can find friends that do what you like to do, that's the first, step you could take. I'm not saying find friends, but you can find people, because that gives you an idea, of what, whether or not they're like-minded. For instance, I love to play tennis. So every time I move or every time I go somewhere, I try to find people that play tennis. And 9 times out of 10, the people that play tennis are people that have other interests that I have. And we, instantly click, and we instantly become, I'm not going to say instantly, I say, years down the line, I can say that they are truly my friends. Now, if it's not tennis, then it's church. I go to church, meet people, or go to the gym, meet people, go for a walk, meet people. But you have to physically do something in order to meet these people, because, hear me out for a second. I have tried like Facebook dating, and I found that on Facebook dating, there's this little tab that says, they want to be friends, or person, is reaching out to you because they want a friendship. And it's weird to me when I get these women saying they want to be friends, and then it's like, after I read, what they have to say, it's like, you don't want to be friends, you want more than that. And I'm not interested in that. That is not, it's not my cup of tea. But anyway, there is a space there where people, some people do reach out and they want to be friends because they just moved to an area. So I tried that, tried meeting some people that way. Some folks were cool, but then after they got to know me, they wanted more. And it's just like, I just wanted to meet some people so I could go play tennis, or I could, go bowling. I could go to a concert and not, be there by myself. Because, there's a fun fact about me. I can go places by myself. I've traveled by myself. I've gone to other countries, been to Switzerland, Germany. I've been all these places by myself. And I could not speak the language. But by the time I left, I met enough people to where I was able to not be alone when I was sightseeing, or when I was trying a new food at a restaurant, or if I was going to an art exhibit, or if I was just going on a walk. I never had to do those things by myself, because I will talk to a tree if it has a mouth, teeth, and a tongue. So they don't even have to have teeth, but I enjoy talking to people just in general. So if you're not like that, though, just stick to what it is that you enjoy doing, and those people will gravitate toward you. And if you like the peace and the silence of your home and just you, don't invite the folks to your house. It's pretty simple, huh? Or what you could do is join a group. Like, I remember when I was living in Mobile, I had joined a group called the Faith Builders. And it was a bunch of people, that were around my age. And we all love the Lord, and we all love to eat. So they were constantly at my house. We were having parties, picnics, seafood boils, whatever. 70 people came to my house at one time. But out of all of those people, 5 of them I would have considered my friends. Now, they all knew me, but 5 of those people, I loved them with everything that I had in me and would do anything for them just as they would for me. But I recognized that they were my people. So the question is, how do you recognize your people? Because you can make friends, you can meet people. That's pretty easy. But how do you recognize, that a person is really for you? I'm telling you this because it is the truth. You feel it. Sure, you've prayed and you asked the Lord to send you that person, but you feel it. You don't feel any fear. You don't feel any qualms. You don't have any questions. You feel nothing but peace. You feel nothing but joy. You're not the one who's always doing everything. And sometimes they finish your sentences. Sometimes they've already thought of whatever it is that you need before you need it. Because you just mentioned that you were going, on a hiking trip, and here they come with this neat little bug spray necklace. And they're like, here, you can wear this. And they had no idea that you might have had sensitive skin and you can't spray all that stuff on you. So it's like you just have this feeling in your body, in your system. And I say it's the Holy Spirit. Because if you prayed and asked the Lord to surround you with the right kind of people, the folks that you want to be your friends, eventually family, then he gives you that conscience to say, if this is right, wrong, or indifferent. Because when people come to you, you feel something. People carry energy. It's up to you to either ignore that energy, or it's up to you to walk away from it. I'm saying some people, become your friend because they see everything that you have and they want to know how they can get to it or get to a piece of it. And if you let your guard down far enough, they'll be in there taking, taking, taking. And by the time you have nothing, it'll be too late. So listen to yourself. Don't try to talk yourself out of something that you felt. Because everything that you feel, it has some truth, it has some meaning, it has something, that you can feel that is real. Because it could be God speaking to you saying, girl, I ain't seen that man, or sir, I did not send that woman. Oh, these are not your friends. These people have come to harm you. So you got to listen to yourself. So in order for us as adults to make friends, first you got to have an open mind. Because you weren't always that amazing, polished version that everyone sees. You had to grow. So if you see someone that you're drawn to, but they're not exactly like you and you feel like they might embarrass you every once in a while, it's okay. You could bring that person into your life, because if they were sent there and they're genuine, they're kind, they're loving, they're true, and they're loyal, they could be a really good friend that you can help to get to where you are, if that's something that's extremely important to you. Because to me, that's not, really important, because when you die, you can't take any of that stuff with you, but you can leave an impression on the people that are left behind, the folks that loved you. I'm just saying. So, as adults, listen to yourself, pray first, then listen to yourself, I should say. And from that point, you be just as good of a friend as you expect them to be. Because everybody doesn't think and do like you do. Everybody's not the type of friend that you are. But guess what? It starts to rub off. It really does. I should say it rubs off. It's more like they see it and they feel like they can trust it. Because think about it, when people meet you, they don't know, how amazing or how awesome you are. They're taking a chance on you too. And then once they see, sometimes they start taking on your characteristics, because they're like, what? I never thought about doing that. I really like that. That is awesome. That is who I want to be. And I want to be around that all the time. I want to soak that in. I want that to be a part of my nature. And if that's the case, then, those are the people you want to be around. That is what you want. So instead of the next time when you're out and someone says hi, don't turn your head, say hi back. Smile. You know, the only way I'd say don't smile is if you got a mouthful of garlic and onions and that smell is going to overcome them. They don't want to be your friend afterwards. Don't do that. I'm kidding. Because you can brush your teeth, but you cannot change a horrible personality. So be friendly. Be a friend. Because if you're a friend, you attract friends. But do it in places where you enjoy life, where you're enjoying things. Because if you don't like, say, these trail rides or bullfighting or horse riding and, stuff like that, and you go out there and you meet some really cool people and they only want to do that sort of thing and you hate it, how does that friendship thrive? If you're always hating whatever it is or wherever it is y'all are going, I mean, that doesn't make sense. You got to get some joy out of it too. Unless, they're willing to come to whatever side it is that you like or you enjoy or you love. Either way, have an open mind, have an open heart. Let the love flow and the energy flow back and forth, withholding nothing for those people that are truly your friends. All right. So that's all I wanted to talk to y'all about today, because, I was sitting here thinking, it's been, 30 years and I moved back, to my hometown, and I've been running into people and I've been talking to folks, and it's like a little more difficult than I thought it would be to, I ain't gonna say make friends, but reconnect with friends, because everyone has their life and everyone is still doing whatever it is that they enjoy doing. And I would just be, coming in trying to figure out what's going on. But I know that with time and everything, that I'll be back in there sooner than later. Because, like I said, I grew up in the middle of nowhere and I know what it means to be a good friend. All right. So thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedule to watch this episode of Embracing the Fight. And I implore you to go out and be a friend. All right. Y'all have a beautiful rest of your day. And as always, I want you to have an absolutely amazing day.